Welcome back to Track Talk, and we'll be doing a game that's a little bit different today. So I've been really avoiding variants and kind of uh, non-standard games for the channel just because I don't think they really add that much, and it just increases the, content burden. But for 18 Chesapeake, there's the variant Off the Rails, and this variant is, in my opinion, basically broken. The train roster just almost guarantees a bankruptcy. But I found one of these games where it actually does not end in bankruptcy, so I thought that it might be interesting to look at, what sets this game apart from the vast majority of other games played with this variant. For those not familiar, 18 Chesapeake's a beginner game and uh, pretty heavily based on 1830. Eight Off the Rails variant is supposed to make the quote unquote beginner game a little bit more advanced. And it does this by removing a train export, changing the market, basically making it the 1830 market, and then also removing some trains from the roster. So there's only 2 5 trains, and this lack of cheap permanent trains is what tends to make people bankrupt. So just minor differences from base 18 Chesapeake, but have a pretty dramatic effect on the way the game plays. Little Rabbit leading us off in the auction. He is going to be bidding on the B&O. This player, and I don't know what this player's name means. I'll have to come up with an abbreviation for him. I'll just call him characters, I guess. He bids on Cornelius Vanderbilt, Sino, going for the cheap CP, and Leeson joining him on that. So probably hoping to prevent a early pull in the auction by doubling up on this blocker. But of course, Little Rabbit and characters could just try and accelerate things anyways. Little Rabbit going on the BNS, and characters is actually passing. So he's just dead set on the Cornelius Vanderbilt. One thing I neglected to note at the start of the game is that the CV is coming with the NNW starting in the far southwest of the map. Not always the most desirable presidency, especially in the early game. Sino is going on the CNO, so he has an uncontested private and a contested private on the Columbia and Philadelphia, and I have to imagine that we're going to see a pull pretty soon here. So Leeson on 2 contested privates, both of the cheaper ones, and Little Rabbit, is he just going to pull now that he has a face value B&O? Probably should. Instead, he is going to triple up on the Columbia and Philadelphia. Characters, he is still passing. Sino joining on the CV. Very strange auction. Leeson, he is going on the CNO, so all these privates have a lot of bids on them, except for the best private of the game, the B&O. And Little Rabbit is actually overbidding on the BNS, so not joining a new private, just fighting for it before the ripcord is pulled. Characters, he is now rejoining the auction and bidding on the CNO. We now have a bid on the B&O, so all the privates are contested, and Leeson now just pulls. Very surprised that we didn't see Little Rabbit pull when he was the sole player on the B&O. We have contested auctions for the rest of the privates, and Columbia and Philadelphia is starting at 55. These 2 privates are just basically blocking privates. They have a little bit of a track association with them, but not really worth much over face, I don't think. Sino's passing. Leeson goes up to 60, and Little Rabbit's staying right with him. So he will take it for 65, probably more than I'd want to really pay for the private. Baltimore and Susquehanna, very similar to the previous private, and they will go up to 75. Little Rabbit takes that, and we'll see if he's able to also take the B&O, which I'd much prefer. But having bid on both of these cheap privates, may have trouble actually securing that B&O. Sino, on the other hand, is on some of the expensive privates, so both of these players are going to have trouble affording these privates. And it looks like characters is at a little bit of risk of leaving without a private. I guess he's on 2 of these privates though, so reasonably good chance that he secures at least one of these. Sino's passing out. Leeson bids 100, and characters staying right with him. Leeson wins it, so again, characters may not be getting a private here, unless he really wants to fight for the Cornelius Vanderbilt. Sino gets the B&O for 110. That's a pretty good price for the B&O. First player to get a reasonably priced private, probably. Cornelius Vanderbilt now being contested, and Characters has no privates, so he should probably win this, but he does not. So Sino gets two privates, the B&O and the N&W, for probably better values than the other players were able to get theirs. This does mean that he will not be taking the B&O as a company, um, and he actually really can't defend the presidency of the N&W very well either. He max pars the N&W, so he can only buy 4 shares of this. Needs to be a little bit careful that someone doesn't steal this presidency. The float in off the rails is 50%, which I think is different from the base game. I believe that's 60% of the base game. Little Rabbit is just passing somehow. PLE is being bought. PLE, good company on the west of the map. Oftentimes we'll see it running a bunch of trains in green out of Green Springs. Sino passing, Lee Sin passing. So maybe this is how players avoid bankruptcy in this game is they just pass and sit on private revenue until they have enough money to afford permanent trains. We'll see. I hope that's not the case. PLE is the sole company floating right now, and Sino sees that the company's going to float and decides to invest in it. Lee Sin, now that Sino is invested, is going to be stealing the N&W, it looks like. And Little Rabbit goes back and floats the Sino. So just some kind of stalling to see where other people put their money before these players feel comfortable investing. Sino, starting in the southeast, works towards Washington and then has some pretty good map in the mid to late game. Early game's very underwhelming. PLE is now floated. Sino continuing to invest. Lee Sin just floating the N&W and stealing this presidency. Sino could make him work for it a little bit by buying one more share, but probably not worth doing that. Sino continuing to float. PLE, now he has all this cash left over as a result of the help of Sino, and he's going to hop in the N&W as well. Sino does buy the N&W share, and Lee Sin continuing to pressure for the presidency. Shouldn't have any difficulty stealing this. Sino gradually floating, and Characters is helping him as well, so just invested in all these companies at this point. Lee Sin becomes the president, so we do end up with a 3-company float, and Little Rabbit is passing, and we go into the next stock round. So I think Little Rabbit has priority. He does. N&W, laying the home tile, paying $80 for it. Does have a very full treasury, so not overly concerned about the $80 revenue. And interestingly, we have a N&W C&O float or start without a B&O. So these two players are going to be racing for Washington, D.C., which is unusual. Usually the DC track is laid first by the B&O player. And it'll take both of these players 4 track lays. Actually, the N&W is 5 track lays to get to be DC tiles. So the C&O has a slight advantage, but with the N&W operating first, he may actually be able to get there. We'll have to see if that works for him. Bad news for whoever gets there second. He buys a 2 train, closing, I think it's Sino's private, and we're up to the PLE. He's running towards Greenspring. Should probably buy more than 1 2 train here, especially if he wants to run hot in green. Sino laying towards DC basically, and he buys a single 2 train. So there are 2 trains left. And Little Rabbit's passing holds a lot of cash. Probably should look to invest this. Characters passing as well. Sino not enough money for shares, and Lee Sin also not enough. Well, he had enough money, just not motivation to invest. Who is this favoring? So a lot of people are just sitting on cash. Sino and Characters have the highest number of paying shares, and Sino has neither one of them have any private income. So it's actually a little bit hard to say. I don't know if the 2 shares is going to make up the $20 of private income this early in the game. Charlottesville being laid, and he runs his 2. He could buy another 2 train here, may want to. and it's just going to pass. Greenspring running a single train, and does he buy another two? Nope. So I think we are seeing how to survive the bankruptcy in off the rails. You basically just play very slowly. CNO, he is heading up towards DC, 2 tracks away, so he should be able to beat the NNW there, even with the NNW operating first. And we are now into stock round 3. Looking at the spreadsheet, we can determine who is benefiting here. And it looks like, yes, the players with the private income are actually still ahead a little bit, or at least Leeson is. But as these company revenues increase, the private players are going to have to start investing their money. Of course, if nobody buys any trains, then the private revenue is not going to increase. Little Rabbit, he is now investing money in the PLE. Right after Characters is selling down. So kind of bad timing for Little Rabbit, unfortunately. And Characters is not investing any cash, so just losing a share for right now. Sino, he snaps up the market share of the PLE and has a good chance to seal the presidency if he wants it. Not sure why Characters sold down there. Leeson, he's buying his N&W. Little Rabbit, buying the N&W as well, so this will be floating up, but it should be already at the ceiling, I think. It is. Characters actually fully selling out of the PLE now, so dumping this company. And what is he looking to start? He starts the B&O. B&O is probably a better company, but the PLE has track laid for it, has a healthy treasury, and he's given this presidency away to someone who's only invested 30% of the company. Sino out of cash, but he will now sell out of the N&W, maybe worried about there being a dump in green. It would be hard to fully deplete this treasury. This hurts the N&W since it's now operating after the CNO. Was going to be beaten to Washington already, but now definitely will be. And Sino, is he going to continue to invest in paying shares? It looks like maybe he's selling out to defend the presidency of the B&O, but he's already lost that, so not going to be able to catch up to Characters really. He's buying PLE shares. Leeson passing, Little Rabbit passing, and Characters are just going to continue to float. Sino now almost maxed in PLE. B&O is floated, and Sino, does he want priority or does he want to invest his cash? Looks like he's prioritizing shares and buys a B CNO. So has a lot of paying shares, 7 paying shares. The B&O is not paying. Some strange decision making in this stock round. Everybody's passing, and this leaves Leeson with priority. First operation of the B&O, heading straight towards DC, and he is going to be able to get the DC track before the CNO if the current operating order is preserved, it looks like. He buys a single 2 train, so there's one more left before 3s. We'll see if anybody wants to push into that. Buys a 2 and is going to neglect to buy into the 3s. CNO does have privates he could have bought in there. That's probably a mistake. N&W laying the dit, still running just a single 2 train, not going to be able to take advantage of all these revenue centers he's opening up. Does he buy a 3? He does. And Leeson at least has privates that he should be buying in here probably. And it's going to pass. Okay. PLE has access to green tiles. Probably can upgrade Greenspring and then buy a 3 to hopefully run into Ohio as well. Looks like he's heading that way. Buying in his private. So the first player to do so is going to have the most cash into the next stock round as a result. Could look to float another company potentially. And there are 2 3 trains left. So we're rapidly approaching our first rusting event. Leeson, he buys an N&W, does have 2 trains, will have better revenue, but is not going to be getting into DC anytime soon, it doesn't look like. Little Rabbit, he is actually buying the CNO, So we'll see if the operating order is preserved here. If the CNO is somehow able to operate before the BNO, which would really only require the CNO to float up or the BNO to be sold down once, CNO is going to be able to snag that DC tile. Not the end of the world now that we're in green, but still would be nice. CNO, he has a bunch of cash and he's buying the CNO. And looks like he's going to be working to float this up, so CNO should be getting that Washington tile. Maybe actually not bad news for the BNO because the CNO lays the track and then BNO is free to upgrade into green and take advantage of that higher paying revenue. So this leaves Leeson with priority. CNO first to operate as a result of the float up. Does lay DC. He actually even lays it friendly towards BNO. Little Rabbit is the president here and he has no BNO shares, so unclear why he's helping the BNO. Again, not really overly relevant just because the DC track would upgrade to green anyways, but still. Now that he has 2 operating rounds, he should probably just buy in his privates in the second operating round rather than buying them in now, but really he should have probably bought them in the last operating round. He tokens DC, runs 2 trains, and is paying for 120. He buys a 3, so we'll have pretty good runs into the next round, as long as we don't see this 4 train come out, which is, I think, pretty likely. He's buying in his privates, but a little bit too early. And we're into the B&O running a single train. He actually upgrades Baltimore, not DC. And he is running for 70, which he pays. Doesn't buy any trains. N&W has lost out on DC for a while. DC is not going to upgrade into this spoke. Could look towards leeching off the track laid by the CNO to get into DC, but going to be a little bit delayed gratification for him. He upgrades Charlottesville. That's strange. If you're going to upgrade a city, why not upgrade Lynchburg, which you're going to hit twice with both of your trains? So he tokens Charlottesville. That's kind of a underwhelming token, and I guess he's going to be running 2 trains out of there instead. He does. All right. PLE, probably heading towards Ohio, does, and has nice runs for himself. 180, and he pays that out. Does he buy another 3 here? No. Okay. So, not to harp on this, but it looks like this is just a very slow game, and that's why nobody bankrupts. CNO upgrades Richmond, running 2 trains out of there, and running for 200. Does the B&O now upgrade DC? He does. And he lays it so that the N&W is in trouble. I think he could have laid this. He had options, so it's a 5-prong city. He could have put a prong here, no problem. But the N&W just gets screwed, basically. And running his 2 train for 80 now. Buying a 3, and he has access to the East Coast cities. Unfortunately, he's going pretty late in priority, so no guarantee he gets the CNA, which I'm sure he's probably hoping for. Leeson running the N&W. He now can head up towards DC through the west. And is he going to finally use any of these privates? I guess not really any incentive to. PLE, he is heading over to DC as well, so operating order between the N&W and PLE will be important in terms of who gets access to the city. And also, they may want to try and operate before the B&O so they can get a token there, although the B&O has been kind of lackadaisical, maybe not prioritizing its tokens. In terms of operating order, the PLE going to be a very tall order for it to operate ahead of the N&W or the B&O, so high likelihood it doesn't get the token, may even not be able to get into DC at all. And we have a player that's still sitting on their privates, and he's getting a little bit of extra cash into his presidency as a result, but should really have bought those in for a much larger infusion of cash. Sino and Little Rabbit, as a result of private buy-ins, have the most cash and are pulling ahead in terms of net worth, particularly Sino. Leeson with priority, probably just buying paying shares. It's going to be hard for him to float another company here. He buys a B&O. Little Rabbit, he is buying the B&O as well. And characters. So everybody's buying the B&O. It looks like they're just looking for this extra $12. I expect we'll probably see maybe Little Rabbit or even Sino buy and then sell in order to float another company. So Sino's not messing around. He sells out of the C&O quite heavily, trashes that share, and what is he looking to par now? He's just buying a B&O. Okay. I think, again, we're seeing these players take this $12, and we will still see some companies parred here. B&O sold out. Little Rabbit. He has bought the C&A, so looks like the B&O player will be missing out on that. Character's now selling out of the C&O, and he's buying the N&W. Okay. Sino buying the N&W as well, so he's buying paying shares. Still has cash to float for max if he wants. Leeson has trashed the B&O and is buying the C&A now. It's a little bit dangerous to float the C&A only at 67, especially in a game like Off the Rails where you need a lot of cash for permanent trains quite quickly. Little Rabbit buying the C&A as well, almost floated. Character's passing Sino. Is he going to par company? He is buying the B&O that has been sold. Leeson selling out of his own N&W. Is he trying to pressure for the presidency of the C&A? There's no way that works. But he's just going to float it for now. Little Rabbit. So after saying there's no way it works, Little Rabbit just dumps the C&A on him. Maybe setting a trap. Low par company for a player with no permanent trains and pretty poor map position. Little Rabbit's not going to have enough cash to float at another company, I don't think. Maybe for minimum par he can. So he is selling a bunch of shares. Is he going to try and max par a company now? He takes the SRR. The SRR is a terrible company, just really bad map position, no tokens to defend its runs. So if you're going to look for another company, I'd much prefer to see the LV or PRR. Character's still passing. Sino, ton of cash. And he's buying the SRR now. Are we going to see some stock trashing here? Leeson, happy to have a new presidency gifted to him courtesy of Little Rabbit. Little Rabbit is just passing now. And Characters has rejoined the game, selling an N&W. What is he looking to do with his cash? He buys an SRR. Sino, still investing in the SRR. May be able to steal this presidency, but why? Leeson getting these cheap shares of his C&A. He's actually buying from the IPO, leaving his market intact. Little Rabbit defending the SRR presidency. Characters passing. Sino trashing the SRR, so just doing a little bit of friendly stock manipulation. And is he going to be looking to par a company finally? He does, the PRR. So he'll have the PLE and the PRR. These companies do have some degree of synergy, but based on how they've built, he builds to the south. He's not heading over to Harrisburg. PRR, if it can secure a token in Green Spring before these other players, does have guaranteed access to Ohio, which is always nice. But again, because of this track, we may see the B&O or even the C&O end up with the token in Green Springs. Even the N&W could head over there, actually. Leeson buying his C&A has almost full investment there. Little Rabbit, he has, I think, parred two different companies and is probably actually his presidency, the SRR, is secure now, so he will end up with a new presidency. Sino buying his PRR. This may leave Leeson with priority. Little Rabbit's passing, just sitting on cash, and Sino's working on floating the PRR. He's taken a detour, buying a C&A, and actually doesn't have enough cash right now to float the PRR if he stays as is. So he buys a share of the B&O, going to be floating that up, and is just going to sit on 40% of the PRR with no revenue resulting from this. All right. Now selling out of the PLE, his other presidency, leaves that vulnerable to take over potentially and floats the PRR. We're into the next stock round. Leeson has priority. B&O is operating first. And where does he want to head? Characters is the president here, and he has no other presidency. Don't know that you want to be overly friendly with any of these companies, but securing a token in Greenspring is very attractive. So maybe he lays a token there. He would probably have his run cut by someone tokening in DC, but DC opens up the 4 holes, so even if he gets cut, that's just temporary. Secures the token in DC. I don't know. I think I would have been tempted to go for Greenspring here. Regardless, he runs for 210 and pays out. PRR's first operation, laying pretty standard track. He buys the 4. Bad news for everyone later in operating order. The B&O gets a little gift in that it's able to run its 2 train before it rusts. So, he could token in Greensprings and is just running his 3 now. He actually withholds. He owns 100% of the revenue of this company. He should definitely be paying out. Buying a 4 train. So I'm a little bit surprised that we don't see bankruptcy actually, just because he has basically no cash. And I guess with the new presidency, the SRR maybe has a little bit more of a treasury than I'm anticipating. NNW, pretty healthy treasury, can upgrade into Greenspring or into DC. Might want to look at Greenspring and just token there. He can hit DC either way with his train. So he does. Bad news for the B&O. Missed out on that token. And he's running the same route for 130. Pays that out. And now finally buying in his privates. A little bit late. The SRR is operating. And Leeson has bought in the blocker only. So I think he has a more expensive private that he's just sitting on. He is. Okay. He buys a train across from the C&O and has 2 trains for both of his, or 1 train for both of his companies. And I guess he's just going to be withholding on the C&O for a while to survive the train rush. PLE, he's linking up with the PRR, his other presidency, is laying some expensive track to do it, and has already been tokened out of the Greensprings tile, so this track is also potentially helping the NNW. PLE, one of the downfalls of this company is its lack of tokens, so I don't know if it really wants to devote a token to Harrisburg, but if it doesn't, the NNW with a ton of tokens could potentially take that. Of course, the NNW threw away a token in Charlottesville for no reason, so actually he can't steal that token. Running for 130, everybody's basically running the same track. And first operation of the CNA, he is passing track, okay, and not buying any trains, so just falling back into yellow. It's reasonable to run a yellow strategy with the 1830 market. Can't really do this in 18 Chesapeake very well, but running a yellow strategy is more involved than just having your company sit on cash in yellow zone. You actually want to do something with the track and trains. B&O, he is heading down to the expensive DIT. That hurts the CNA. Running for 110 now that he's been tokened out of Greensprings, and he pays that out. NNW with a 3 train. He is upgrading Lynchburg and running for 130, same run for him. PRR, does he lay Hagerstown? He does, and has only a 3 run for now. Who has the Columbia and Philadelphia? It's C&O, so I don't know that he's motivated to really help the PRR player by opening this private up. C&O is linking up with the SRR, it looks like, and the Baltimore and Susquehanna has been bought in, and he owns it. Can't take advantage of that private to create this link because this track has to be continuous, but at least he's not going to be blocked. PLE, running a 3-train, upgrading Harrisburg. Does he immediately token there? Not just yet. No competition, so fine to sit on that token. Running for 130, which he pays. SRR. He gets a link into Washington, but only 2 stops for his 3-train. CNA, is he going to do anything? Looks like no. All right. So I guess the CNA is worried that if he buys a 4-train, these 3 trains are gonna, or these 5 trains are gonna get snapped up, and then he's gonna be potentially up a creek when the 6 trains come out. So he's in a bad position, just having to fall back on the CNA. Leeson, he is investing in the SRR, just buying paying shares. Little Rabbit, buying the SRR. And the NNW is being sold, so is character looking to float the LV? He'll have to sell some more shares if he wants to. And he does par the LV. He has just enough cash to par it for 82. Sino, buying the SRR. Not sure why everybody's investing in this company. Doesn't really have great runs. Leeson, buying the PRR. Little Rabbit, still investing in the SRR. And character will probably be investing in the LV. Instead buying a share of the CNO, so maybe doing a little bit of stock trashing on the way, or is he just reserving the presidency of the LV? Remains to be seen. Looks like stock trashing. Okay. CNO is buying the PLE, his own company. He buys it from the IPO, getting a $4 bonus and keeping his market intact. Leeson buying his PRR. Little Rabbit also with the PRR. And looks like character is going to do a little more stock trashing probably. He does. So he's just going to trash everyone's shares one time and then float his LV. This will cost him priority and probably really doesn't hurt the other players as much as he seems to think. Sino, he buys that cheap market share. This is exactly the problem with doing this. Leeson, last share for him, and he floats the PRR up so that dink on the stock value is going to be erased immediately, it looks like. Little Rabbit passing, characters. He is now just buying his LV. So giving priority to Sino. Sino buys the PLE. He buys it from the IPO again. And he's got the most shares by a good margin. He has 2 companies, and one of them has enough cash for permanent train. The other one, with a market, will slowly get there. But if we see an aggressive push for trains, this is the kind of situation that could potentially lead to bankruptcy. He's not unique in this scenario. Obviously, there's been a lot of low pars, and there's no permanent trains in the game yet, so all the players are kind of at risk. Leeson selling out of the PRR, trashing its value, and buying LV. I guess maybe you could start looking at operating order here in terms of when this 5-train is going to come out. Hopefully somebody's looking at that. I haven't been paying attention to it. The B&O operating first right now. Could buy the 4, but even with a hold, I don't think he has money to buy the 5 as well. NNW operating afterwards. Could buy the 5 if the B&O wanted to buy the 4. And then we're to the LV. So if he trashes the value of the LV, it'll be operating later than the PLE and CNO, potentially operating right ahead of the PRR. PRR does have permanent train money, so maybe by trashing the LV, he's hoping that the PRR, for instance, ends up with permanent trains. Doesn't make sense since he's not the presidency. His presidents are the NNW and the CNA. So CNA, of course, operating late. If he were to trash the LV very heavily and have it operate after the PRR, the SRR could buy a 5, and then the CNA could pick up the last 5. So maybe that's his goal. Characters, he is now floated. And Leeson continue to invest in the LV, so I think we will see a pretty heavy trash here. He buys 3 shares. Does he just immediately sell them all? Just passing for now. And he's actually selling out of his N&W, so maybe he will buy another share of the LV to max trash it. Looks like it. and actually just gonna stay invested in the LV, it looks like. That's interesting. He's lost priority by doing this, so the LV is very dumpable. Could deplete its treasury, buy a nice train, buy it into your other company, and then dump this on Leeson without any difficulty. All right. B&O, he is upgrading Strasbourg, and not clear to me why he's doing that. He's not running the track, of course. Runs for 110, N&W, running the same route as before. 130 pays it out. And we'll see if the LV buys this last 4 train here. He is laying himself track, so we'll need a train. Buys the 4, and actually can buy the 5. I think I didn't realize that he had enough cash to do this. So who's getting the second 5 now? Sino doesn't have money for it, and the PLE also without money for it. PRR, oh, it'll go to the PRR. Okay. That means the CNA could potentially buy the 6. If Leeson buys a 6 here, he's in some trouble. The N&W would be falling back trainless. He could out of pocket a 6, and then that would put some pressure on the PLE player who would be on the hook for a D train probably. 5 trains bought. CNO. Upgrading Baltimore. Does he just token there? He does. He's out of money for permanent trains anyways. He's running for 170 in full withholding. So I guess when you're staring down the barrel of permanent trains, you're kind of nervous and want to withhold. But again, with 100% of this revenue, you might as well just pay it out and get the stock appreciation. You have to fall back when you emergency buy a train, but if you can pay out enough times, it's worth it. PLE, upgrading DC. Does he grab this token? He's going to pass for now, and he's paying out. PRR, he links up with DC, and he could grab this token now, which he does. There is one more slot in DC, of course. And does he buy a permanent train here? He snags it, so we're on to the 6s. And I thought it was going to be the CNA buying the 6, but it may be the SRR, actually. SRR upgrading his home, running his 3 train for actual 3 stops this time at least. And he buys the 6. So CNO, is he going to just suitcase this company, or does he buy a 6? He lays himself track and will be buying a 6. So I'm a little bit surprised we don't see a bankruptcy in this game, actually, because there are 3 players that are falling on D trains. It looks like it's going to be close. PLE in particular doesn't have that much cash. We know that the D train's going to be coming out because Leeson can't just shuffle trains. So these other 2 players might be tempted to buy the 4 over to delay things, but actually the PLE is not even going to have that option because the N&W operates so early. B&O linking up with the LV start, holding onto his token for now. Unfortunate for him because he has a full investment kind of portfolio, so he's going to have to withhold to get money for this token if he doesn't lay it now. I understand why you wouldn't want to spend money right before out-of-pocketing a permanent train, but still, you need to use this token eventually, probably. He is just shuffling trains, so kicking the can down the road. We'll get a little bit more cash and have the opportunity to adjust his portfolio by doing this, but is still on the hook for a D train in the near future. N&W, he does have to buy a D train here, and he's selling out of the LV, trashing that company. He invested in the LV and got 0 revenue for this, so he just falls back unnecessarily. And the LV has a permanent train already, so it's not like he's causing anybody's bankruptcy by doing this. That said, Characters is on the border of a bankruptcy, but still probably suboptimal play from Leeson. He is selling shares and buys the PLE, so bad news for everybody with 4 trains. PLE, He is upgrading Washington, can token there if he wants, and does, but now has to out-of-pocket a D. He's secured himself a D train. Doesn't have the best D runs necessarily. Could bypass Baltimore into Strasburg, or potentially we'll see the 00 gray on Baltimore, which would open up his runs a little bit. PRR, first company with a train, and is upgrading Strasburg. So we will see some opening up of the map. Running for 290, which he pays. PRR also with a permanent train, upgrading Baltimore. So this usual kind of choke point of the map has been totally opened up for everyone basically. And I don't know if that there's enough tokens left in the game to close this down. CNA and LV both have tokens, so does the PRR, but I think they're the only players with tokens. B&O has a token. So if the LV and yeah, these could be tokened out. We may see that still. Sino on the hook for a D train and is shuffling trains out of the SRR, buys it against priority, and still needs a D train. So that's just very inefficient. And just shuffling trains. Okay, so I think we probably would have seen a bankruptcy in this game if he hadn't shuffled trains. So even this game, which I picked because it was quote unquote bucking the trend of off the rails, probably should still have been a bankruptcy game, even with the kind of very slow, cautious play to date. So is it possible to play properly and not have a bankruptcy in off the rails? I don't know. Seems unlikely. Allentown upgrading, running for 280, which he withholds. Again, full market, sole investor. Why are you withholding? In his case, at least he's getting into yellow with this, but does he have enough cash into the next stock round to take advantage of that? Not really. So would have preferred to see him pay here. CNA running a 6 train but has terrible routes. Will be heading towards New York soon enough. Has no money for a token even. Running for just 60, which he withholds for token money, presumably. And we're into the next stock round. 2 players with a little bit of cash, but everyone's in kind of a tenuous position. Little Rabbit buying D-Train shares. Characters is selling out of his B&O, probably realizing that it's not going to be running and he's going to be struggling to finance a D, needs some paying shares. So he will just pass for now, but he needs to buy some shares that are operating ahead of the B&O probably. Sino buying the PLE and selling the SRR. Leeson, he's just passing. Little Rabbit buying the PLE now. Characters, he is also investing in the PLE, but this is operating after his B&O, so he may very well have to sell the shares he's buying. Sino buying the N&W, good D-Train company, could even pressure for the presidency if he wanted to. Leeson out of cash and passing. Little Rabbit, he is selling out of the SRR, vulnerable presidency there, and he's doing this because he needs paying shares to finance a D for the C&O, it looks like. Buying the PLE, and Characters is investing in the PRR with a permanent train, of course. Sino buying the N&W. Do we see him steal this presidency? That would be pretty bad news for Leeson. Leeson could defend. Actually, he really can't defend because the CNA shares are so cheap, so he will probably be losing this presidency. Little Rabbit buying the N&W as well. Sino not going to pressure. He could have sold a share and taken this presidency. Selling a PLE is maybe not desirable, but selling a PRR, not the end of the world. PRR is actually just $1 short of allowing him to steal the presidency with one stock sale. I think selling 2 shares, though, is still worth stealing the presidency. It has a D train. You could shuffle that and put it in a better company with better runs if necessary. N&W, first company to operate. He is upgrading Greenspring and has a pretty darn good D run. Surprised we didn't see this presidency stolen. PRR, he has a bunch of cash, permanent train, and tokens, so probably needs to leave tokens somewhere. I would be looking at either Allentown or Baltimore right now. And he's going to pass his tokens. running for 310. Is there a reason he wouldn't token here? Does the PLE have a D run he'd be cutting? It does. Um, so maybe he wants to leave the PLE access to New York, but there's other players with tokens. No guarantee that they are feeling as generous as he is. Um, PLE running a D train should have a pretty monstrous run here. Is this all he can do? Probably has a better run than this. Um, for instance, hitting Ohio seems like it would be better. This may be optimal actually because he's hitting a bunch of cities down here. When this track is upgraded, may be able to optimize things a little bit differently. So running for 590, B&O, does he finally buy a D train here? Is he going to continue to shuffle? So he's still shuffling. All right. So yeah, I've said this once before, but this absolutely should have been a bankruptcy game. It's just not because players are shuffling trains instead of just admitting defeat. C&O, upgrading Hagerstown, does have a token and is passing it. Does he buy a train? It looks like he's finally going to fall on the bullet and buy a train. LV does have a ton of cash in his company for a D train. Upgrades Philadelphia, sitting on his token still. And he buys a D train. So does everybody have their trains at this point? It looks like it. And several near bankruptcies, liquidity of 110 for characters and 240 for Little Rabbits. Sino is in the best position in this game, and unfortunately, his D run is not secure. He has far and away the most shares, but needs to invest wisely and maybe even shuffle his D train into a better company to guarantee the victory. He'd be in a better position if he had stolen that N and W, but wasn't able to do it. SRR does have a token that it's going to be getting cash for with its market shares and running for 340, which it pays out. CNA has a 6 train, has better runs finally, and does have token money. Where does he leave this token? He tokens in Baltimore. That's fine, but Strasburg has already bypassed Baltimore. May have been advisable to leave that in Allentown. I don't know. There's so many tokens on the map. Kind of a game of chicken. Whoever tokens first may regret their decision. Running for 340, which he pays out into the next operating round. N&W has been tokened out of Baltimore and is running into New York instead for 500, so increases its run. Out of tokens, but does have cash. PRR, he looks like setting up for a run into New York through Camden and has 2 tokens available, so it could token in Allentown and Camden if it wanted. But for now, not tokening anywhere. I think he needs to shuffle trains out of the PLE and just start dropping tokens on the PRR. PLE has a good 5 train run, and you would be able to run your D train in the PRR very safely with all these tokens. He would lose a run on the D train, of course, by buying it across operating order, but he's so far ahead that little difficulty wouldn't be outweighed by the long-term benefit. P. Lee linking up with New York, increasing his run, running for 660. But again, with all these tokens on the players' charters, he needs to be a little bit careful his run isn't just cut in the near future. Running for 310, pays it out, now has token money. C&O, he is upgrading into Philadelphia, bypassing Allentown potentially, and running for 610. SRR, just laying track into Philadelphia, running for 350, and everyone is just sitting on these tokens. Very frustrating. I may overemphasize tokens, but boy, they should be laying some of them. LV looking to bypass Washington, D.C. and get into these offboards, running for 400. CNA, no tokens, so he is one of the players that actually did use his token, has a decent 6 train run. Unfortunately for him, hitting New York is going to require hitting a DIT, which is much less painful when you have a D train. But still pretty good runs through DC, Baltimore, Strasburg, and Philadelphia, Camden. So he's running for 350 and he pays that. Still in yellow. NNW, he is upgrading Berlin. That's kind of meaningless track. Runs for 560, which he pays. PRR, are we going to finally see some token action? Upgrading Berlin and running for 310, which he pays. PLE, still running the D train, has bypassed Washington, D.C. We'll see if he's able to do any fancy loops here to improve his runs. 690. So this track really didn't impact his run at all. Basically just added in Berlin for $30 extra. Surprised that he helped people bypass Washington, D.C. when he has a token there. Neither of his trains, he has 2 tokens there, so why is he bypassing that city? B&O passing track and his token running for 310. C&O, I think he's just optimizing D runs by trying to incorporate these DITs. Running for 620, which he pays. Everybody has so many shares in the market, they can almost afford a second D train. SRR, he completes that link up and runs for 350. LV $200, and looks like he's potentially bypassing Greenspring. Running for 440, which he pays, and CNA, last company to operate in this round. Running for 350, which he pays. So the market has $3,000 in it. Unless a lot of people buy permanent trains with these massive runs, we should see the bank break. And Sino is pretty far ahead. There is life left in this game. I mean, players could change things up with these tokens. But by tokening and buying additional D trains, you could potentially extend this and try and catch up to the Sino. But I think that we're just going to see players buy up to their cert limits or buy all the remaining shares and then pay out to break the bank. Let's skip through this auction or this stock round. There'll be no dumps, so everybody's just going to be buying paying shares. And then we can look at people's portfolios. Sino with 21 shares is leading, tied with Leeson. Leeson has a yellow company but is not able to take advantage of this. Unfortunate for him. And that's just because there's really no shares available for him to buy. The other 2 players have 2 shares less. And in terms of operating order, Little Rabbit has priority, so there are potentially dumpable companies if they wanted to, but with so much cash in the game, you dump a company on someone, they're just going to out of pocket or shuffle for the D, and then, they have an extra share density as a result of you giving them presidency. So I don't think we'll see any dumps, and really with $6,000 in the bank, companies running for $600-$700, we should be seeing the bank break. I'm not going to go through each operating round in any detail. Let's skip to the end and see if anybody drops any tokens. Nope. So everything is staying the same. In terms of revenue, Sino is leading and he's so far ahead. The market has $2,000. We're going to see the bank break here. We'll skip this stock round as well. Still nobody's dropping any tokens. We have the C&O with a token, SRR, LV, B&O, PRR. All these players have plenty of cash for tokens. And one thing I didn't note is that C&O did steal the presidency of the NW. So that was one change, but that's the leader getting even further ahead, so no big deal there. And since nobody's tokening, nobody's doing anything, bank is broken. Let's just skip to the end here. C&O takes it. Little Rabbit following pretty distantly. Leeson a little bit closer to Little Rabbit, and characters bringing up the rear. So hard to comment on games of 18 Chesapeake because they're usually played by newer players. Don't want to, be overly harsh, but a lot of suboptimal play here. It was interesting to see a off the rails game played to bank break, since that's unusual. but I think the only way that this happens in this game is with misplay. We should have seen some bankruptcies here. All right, well, we at least have expanded the channel offerings a little bit. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll be back with more in the near future.